A cabin in the deep Appalachians is not the same thing as a cabin anywhere else. I want to say that clearly before we get into any of tonight's stories, because the distinction matters. A cabin in the Rockies, a cabin in Maine, a cabin in the Pacific Northwest, those are beautiful isolated structures in beautiful isolated places, but the land around them is relatively new land. The forests are young by mountain standards. The ground beneath those cabins hasn't been absorbing human experience for as long. A cabin in the deep Appalachians sits on some of the oldest land in the world. The rock underneath it has been there for nearly 500 million years. The hollows those cabins occupy were carved by water that has been running the same courses since before most of the world's current geography existed. And everything that has ever happened inside those walls, every birth and death, every ordinary winter and every extraordinary night, every person who sheltered there and every person who didn't make it out of the weather in time, all of it has had a very long time to settle into the wood and the stone and the ground. A cabin in the deep Appalachians holds what happens inside it. Tonight, 3 stories from people who found out exactly what their cabin was holding. I read it completely before I told the others. That was the first mistake. Or maybe it wasn't a mistake, maybe knowing it fully before Cress and Jolie knew. It was the only way I could figure out what to do. Because if I'd read the first 2 entries and shown them to the others immediately, we'd have probably laughed and moved on. And I would never have read the rest. And I would never have understood what the entries were describing. I needed to read all of them before I understood. And then I needed to sit with it for a while before I could explain it to anyone else. My name is Tamsin, I'm 31. Cress and Jolie have been my closest friends since college. The 3 of us do 1 trip a year together. No partners, no family, just us in whatever place we've picked. This year, it was a remote Appalachian rental in the mountains of eastern Tennessee, a hand-built log cabin on 12 private acres, accessible by a gravel road that the listing described as suitable for high-clearance vehicles, which was a gentle way of saying it would damage a regular car. We drove up in Cress's truck. The cabin was everything the listing had promised, and then some. Old logs properly chinked, a stone fireplace that worked, a covered porch looking out over a holler, no cell signal, complete privacy. The owner had left a key in a lockbox and a handwritten welcome note on the table, and on the side table near the door, a guest book, a real one, cloth covered, the kind that accumulates years of entries. I picked it up because I always pick up guest books in rental properties. I like reading what other people experienced in the same space. I sat on the porch with a glass of wine and started reading from the beginning. Most of the entries were what you'd expect. Different dates spanning the past 3 years, short, cheerful notes about the views and the fireplace and the hiking nearby, the usual vocabulary of people describing a good vacation. Then I found the first entry from him. I'll call him R, that's the initial he signed with. The first entry was dated approximately 5 months before our stay. First time here. Drove up from Knoxville, needed quiet, and this is the right kind of quiet. The holler at dusk is extraordinary. Something about this place that I can't quite name yet. Back next weekend. I noted the back next weekend and kept reading. The second entry. 1 week later, second visit. It feels like I've been here before in a way I can't explain. Not deja vu, more like recognition. The porch at night especially. Something at the tree line after dark. Not sure what, probably wildlife. Back next week. Third entry, 1 week later, third weekend. I'm starting to feel like this place is mine. I know that's strange for a rental. The feeling at the tree line is clearer. Something watches from there. Not hostile, curious, I think. Found myself talking to it last night. Felt completely natural. Back next week. I put the book down for a moment, then I kept reading. Fourth entry. The tree line thing came closer last night. Not to the porch, to the yard. I sat on the porch steps. We were about 30 feet apart. I don't know what it is. I'm not sure the category matters. It didn't feel wrong. It felt like something that has been here a very long time and is deciding something about me. Back next week. Fifth entry, 5 weekends. I drove up Friday night for the first time instead of Saturday morning. It was waiting at the tree line when I arrived. I think it knew I was coming. We sat out until 2 a.m. I keep trying to find words for what it is. The best I can do is presence, a very old presence, one that finds me interesting. Back next week. 6th entry, 6 weeks. It came to the porch railing last night. I stayed in my chair. We were maybe 10 feet apart. I couldn't see it clearly in the dark, but I could feel it completely. It's been here longer than the cabin has. It's been here longer than anything with walls has been in this holler. I feel like I'm being evaluated for something. Don't know what. Back next week, 7th entry, 7 visits. I understand now why this place feels like mine. It's not the cabin. It's that whatever is here has decided I belong to it in some way. Not threatening, the opposite. Like being chosen for something. I've stopped asking what. I'm just here. Back next week. 8th entry. The handwriting changed here. Still identifiable as the same person but less controlled. Written faster or with less attention to the formation of letters. 8. I'm not sleeping much, but I don't feel tired. I sit on the porch most of the night. It comes to the steps. I've started to think it's been waiting for someone specific for a very long time. I think I might be that person. Don't know what that means yet. Back. He'd stop writing next week. Just back. 9th entry. Shorter. 9. It touched my hand last night. I can't describe what that felt like, except recognized. The way you feel recognized by something that has known you for much longer than you've known yourself. I'm going to try to stay longer this time. Maybe the whole week. 10th entry, barely legible, written in the margins of the page because he'd run off the lines. Still here. Don't know how many days. Losing track. It's with me constantly now. Inside the cabin too, not just the porch. It fills the space around me. I don't feel scared. I feel like I've been waiting for this my whole life and didn't know what I was waiting for. Everything is going to be different when I come back. If I come back, or maybe I'll just stay. The 10th entry was dated 2 weeks before our arrival. I turned to the owner's welcome note on the table. It mentioned that the previous guest had left some personal items that had been collected and stored. If we found anything belonging to someone else, please set it aside. Personal items. I walked through the cabin. In the bedroom. On the nightstand. A phone charger still plugged into the wall. In the bathroom. A toothbrush. A man's razor. A travel-sized shaving cream. In the kitchen. A grocery bag with non-perishables, dried pasta, canned soup, coffee, enough food for several more days. He had not packed to leave. He had been planning to stay. I went back to the porch. Cress and Jolie were inside making dinner. I could hear them talking and laughing, the specific sound of two people who don't know yet. I looked at the tree line. The holler was in that specific late afternoon light that makes Appalachian country look like something painted rather than something real, all amber and shadow. The trees at the edge of the yard beginning to go dark at their bases, while their upper branches still caught the last of the sun. I looked at the tree line for a long time. Then I went inside. I told Cress and Jolie everything. We read the entries together, all 10 of them, and then we sat with the charger and the toothbrush and the food, and we made a decision. We had paid for the cabin. We were staying, but we did not sit on the porch after dark. Not once in the entire weekend. And on the morning we left, I added an entry to the guest book. I described what we'd read and what we'd found. I described the items left behind. I wrote what I thought, which was that R had encountered something in that holler that had decided it wanted him, and that whatever it had offered him in exchange for staying, he had decided was worth taking. I signed it with my name, not an initial, my full name, because I wanted whatever is in that holler to know who I was, and that I'd read all 10 entries, and that I understood, and that I chose to leave. I need to explain something about how old Appalachian cabins are built, because the wrong window only makes sense in that context. Old, hand-built Appalachian cabins, the serious ones, the ones built by families who expected to live in them for generations, are constructed with a logic that is entirely functional. Every element exists for a reason. A window provides light or ventilation or both. An interior wall provides structural support or privacy or both. Nothing is included that doesn't serve a purpose, and nothing is excluded that the builder needed, which is why an interior window, a window that faces from one interior room into another interior room, makes no sense. Interior windows serve no ventilation purpose. The air on both sides is interior air. They serve no light purpose. Both sides are lit by exterior windows. They don't provide privacy. They do the opposite of that. They have no function. There is no reason for an interior window. Holt had been building and renovating in Appalachian mountain structures for 32 years. He had never once found an interior window in one, until he found ours. My name is Beckett. I'm 46. Anya is my wife. We bought a cabin in the North Carolina mountains as a renovation project, an eventual retirement retreat, 11 acres, hand-built construction from the early 1900s. In rough but structurally sound condition, Holt came highly recommended, a local builder. Mountain property was his specialty. He'd assessed the cabin before we bought it and been the reason we'd felt confident about the purchase. Renovation started in March. The cabin had 4 rooms, 2 on the ground floor, 2 on the upper loft level. The configuration was standard for the period. A main room with the fireplace, a rear room that had been used as a kitchen, an upper sleeping loft accessed by a steep stair, and a smaller upper room accessed from the loft, used historically for storage. Holt started work on the main room and worked his way back. Week 3, he was in the rear kitchen room, pulling damaged plaster off the walls, standard opening up work. He called me from the site on a Wednesday afternoon. He said, "Beckett, I need you to come up to the cabin." I said, "Is something wrong?" He said, "I found something I need to show you in person." I drove up the next morning. Holt was in the rear kitchen room when I arrived. The plaster from the north wall stripped back to the original log surface, the room smelling of old lime and dust. The north wall of the rear kitchen room shares its surface with the rear wall of the main room. In the north wall of the rear kitchen room, at eye height, roughly centered, was a window set into the logs, properly framed. 4 panes of old glass, the wavy, imperfect glass of early handmade production, in a wooden frame that was original to the cabin construction. On the other side of the glass, the main room. You could see from the kitchen, through this window, into the main room. I stood and looked at it. I said, "Did you know this was here when you assessed the cabin?" Holt said, "No, the plaster covered it completely. It's been behind plaster for a long time." I said, "How long?" He said, "Based on the plaster layers, at least 50 years, probably longer." I said, "Who plasters over a window?" He said, "Someone who doesn't want it used." I stood at the window and looked through into the main room. The main room was clearly visible, the fireplace, the rough floor, the light from the exterior windows. I said, "What's the purpose of it?" Holt said, "That's what I needed you to see." I don't know. I've been doing this work for 32 years, and I have never seen an interior window in a structure like this. I said, "Could it have been an exterior window originally? Could the kitchen have been added later, enclosing an exterior opening?" Holt said, "I thought of that, but the kitchen room's exterior wall runs flush with the rest of the cabin's footprint. It was always an interior room." I said, "Then why is the window here?" He said, "That's what I need you to tell me." We stood and looked at it for a while. Then Anya, who had driven up with me and been quiet in the doorway, said, "What's on the other side of that wall?" I said, "The main room." She said, "I know what's supposed to be on the other side of the wall. I mean what's actually there." I looked at her. She said, "Go stand in the main room and look at that wall." I went and stood in the main room. The north wall of the main room was solid log. No window, no frame, no glass. The window was only visible from the kitchen side. I came back to the kitchen. I said, "From the main room, there's no window." "The wall is solid," Anya said, "so it only looks in, not out." A pause. I said, "Yes." Holt measured both rooms carefully that afternoon. The main room measured 17 feet east to west. The kitchen room measured 14 feet east to west. The exterior of the cabin measured 37 feet east to west. 17 plus 14 is 31. The cabin exterior was 37 feet, 6 feet unaccounted for. 6 feet between the north wall of the kitchen and the east wall of the main room that didn't appear in either room's interior dimension. Holt said, "There's a space in there." I said, "Between the 2 rooms." He said, 6 feet wide, running the full depth of the cabin, north to south. Old construction sometimes has gaps in the framing, poorly measured or settling over time, but not 6 feet. 6 feet is a room. He said there's a room between these two rooms, and the window in the kitchen wall was looking into it. Holt tried to access the space from the exterior. He went around every face of the cabin, looking for a door, a hatch, any opening. Nothing. He went into the crawl space below the cabin. Below the space that corresponded to the 6-foot gap, the floor joists ran across it normally, no access hatch from below. He went into the attic above. The same gap, the space corresponding to those 6 feet, had floorboards laid across the joists above it, but no hatch from above. A 6-foot wide room running the full depth of the cabin, accessible from nowhere, except visually, through the interior window, through the wavy old glass, looking into the space between the rooms. I looked through the window into the space for a long time. It was dark in there, the only light filtering through cracks in the exterior log facing thin strips of natural light at irregular intervals. I pressed my face close to the glass to see better. The space was not empty. There was something on the floor of it. I could not see clearly enough through the old glass and the dim light to be certain of what, but the floor of the 6-foot space had shapes on it. Low shapes, arranged, objects. I asked Holt to bring his work light. He held it at the glass and we both looked. The floor of the sealed space had objects arranged on it. I'm going to be honest about the limits of what we could see. The glass was imperfect and the light was entering at an angle. But what I could make out, across a space that had been sealed for at least 50 years, and possibly much longer, was an arrangement, several objects in a rough circle, and at the center of the circle, something vertical, something that appeared to be standing upright in the center of an arrangement on the floor of a sealed room. Neither of us said anything for a moment. And then Holt said, "I'm not opening that wall." I said, "Okay." He said, "I've been in this work 32 years. I don't open walls. I don't understand." I said, "What do you recommend?" He said, "I recommend we plaster over the window, put it back the way someone left it 50 years ago, and we treat the 6-foot space as a structural element we don't touch." I said, "You think someone plastered over it deliberately?" He said, "I think someone had a very good reason. We plastered over the window. The renovation continued, finished. The cabin is now what we wanted it to be, a beautiful functional retreat in the North Carolina mountains. We use it regularly. The north wall of the kitchen room is smooth plaster, painted the soft white we chose. The north wall of the main room is the original log surface, oiled and beautiful. Between them 6 feet that don't appear in any room, the arrangement on the floor of that sealed space, the vertical thing at its center. I've thought about it often. I've thought about why the window was built facing in only, why you could see through it from the kitchen but not from the main room, why someone designed a window that showed you a sealed space but didn't let you see back through from inside that space, a window for watching, not a window for light, a window for keeping an eye on something in a room that no one was supposed to enter. I've thought about what you put in a sealed room, in an old Appalachian cabin, in a space accessible from nowhere. And I've thought about whether what I saw standing upright in the center of that arrangement on the floor was still standing when Holt put the plaster back over the glass. I didn't look again before he covered it. I wish I had. I also wish I hadn't thought about it every time I stand in that kitchen. Both of those things are true. 2 stories in, 1 more to go. If this is what you come here for, hit subscribe right now. Every week more of this, the real cabin stories, the real encounters, the things people found in deep Appalachian country that they didn't go looking for. Drop a comment. Which one got under your skin more so far? The guest book entries that ended with someone who never checked out, or the sealed room with the arrangement on the floor, because story 3 is the quietest of the 3 tonight. And sometimes the quiet ones are the worst. I want to tell this through the list, because the list is what made it undeniable, and the list is what changed it from something I could explain to something I couldn't. Any one item on the list, taken alone, has an explanation. A mouse got in. A pipe situation caused something to move. The cold contracted the wood and shifted things. Old cabins do things. We know that. But a list of 37 items, each one specific, each one requiring knowledge of the cabin that a random animal or weather event or settling structure doesn't have. That's not an old cabin doing things. That's something that knew the cabin, that knew it the way we know it, maybe better. My name is Prentice. I'm 52. Odessa is my wife. Maeve is our daughter. She's 22 now, was 20 when this happened. The cabin has been in my family for 4 generations. My great-grandmother's family built it in the Virginia mountains in the early 1900s. It's been in continuous family use since. We use it 3 seasons, spring through fall, and close it for winter. The closing procedure is the same every year. I was taught it by my father, who was taught it by his. Draining the pipes, covering the furniture, storing the mattresses in the loft in sealed bags, putting the wood pile under the tarps, leaving the place in the specific order that makes the spring reopening simple and finds everything where you left it. We closed it properly in late October. We opened it in April, Odessa and Maeve and I. What we found was not what we left. I'm going to give you the list. Not all 37 items, but enough of them to show you what the list means. Item 1, the wood pile. We left 8 tarped cords of split wood under the lean-to on the north side. We arrived to find 6 cords. 2 cords of wood had been burned over the winter. A mouse doesn't burn wood. A structural settling doesn't burn wood. Someone with access to the cabin spent enough time there over the winter to burn 2 full cords of wood. Item 2, the kitchen. The kitchen has a hand-painted tile backsplash behind the stove, 32 individual tiles, one of them cracked in a fall about 6 years ago. I've always meant to replace it and haven't. We know which tile is cracked. It's the 3rd from the left in the 2nd row. In April, the cracked tile had been carefully removed. Not broken away, removed, intact. The adhesive behind it showing the clean pull of someone who'd worked the tile loose deliberately. The tile was on the windowsill. Someone had taken the cracked tile off the backsplash and set it on the windowsill to replace it later, perhaps. Item 3, the loft. The mattresses in the loft are sealed in plastic bags for the winter. Standard procedure. I've done it every year for 30 years. In April, one of the mattress bags had been opened and resealed. Not torn, the seal separated and then repressed. The way you do when you open something carefully because you know you'll want to close it again. One mattress had been slept on over the winter, resealed in the spring. Before we arrived, item 4, the pantry. We leave certain non-perishable staples at the cabin year-round: flour, salt, sugar, coffee, the kind of things that make reopening easier when you don't want to drive with a full grocery load. We stock it in October, we inventory what's used in April, and restock over the summer. In April, the coffee was gone. Not just low, gone. The tin was empty. Someone had drunk a full tin of coffee over the winter. Item 5, the shelf. My grandmother built a specific shelf system in the main room. Handmade, specific, and personal. There's a section on the lower right where we keep matches and a Bible and a small oil lamp. They've been in the same order on that shelf for 40 years. In April, the order was different. Not random, different in a specific way. The lamp had been moved to the left. The matches were at the back. The Bible was open, left open. 2 Psalms. Item 6, the chair. There is one chair in the cabin that faces the front window. An old rocker, the chair my great-grandmother made. It has sat in the same position relative to the window for my entire lifetime. Angled slightly left, the specific angle that puts the morning light from the right without it hitting your eyes. In April, the chair was angled right. Whoever sat in it over the winter preferred the morning light from the left. Item 7, the drawer. The kitchen has one junk drawer, the way all kitchens do. Ours has the specific accumulated detritus of 4 generations of mountain use. Rubber bands, pencil stubs, a deck of cards with 3 missing, old receipts, a small flashlight, a spare key to the woodshed. In April, the flashlight batteries had been replaced. We'd left them dead. We always mean to replace them and forget. It's been a family joke for years. Someone went into town, bought batteries, replaced them. Left the old ones on the counter so we'd know. Item 8, the porch. The front porch has 3 chairs. We always stack them against the house for winter. In April, one chair was unstacked, positioned at the porch rail facing the holler. Someone had sat on the porch during the winter, looking at the view. I'm going to stop the list there, not because it ends there, it goes to 37, but because I think you have enough to understand what it meant. Odessa walked through the cabin with me that first day, and we called things out to each other as we found them. And by the end, we were both quiet in a way that was past processing. Maeve found the Bible. She came out of the main room holding it carefully, like it was fragile. And she said, "Who reads Psalms?" I said, "What?" She said, "Someone read this all winter." They kept coming back to this page. I said, "How do you know?" She said, "The binding. This is the page it wants to open to now. When a book is read repeatedly from the same page, the spine remembers. The spine remembers." We talked about who could have been there. Every family member was accounted for, and none of them had mentioned using the cabin. The cabin had not been broken into, the locks were intact, the windows were intact. Whoever had been there had a key, or could enter without one. I want to be careful about what I conclude from that, because the honest answer is I don't know which one is more disturbing. A person with a key who has access I didn't know about, who spent the winter in the cabin, who burned 2 cords of wood and drank all the coffee and fixed the flashlight batteries and read Psalms and sat on the porch looking at the holler and slept on one of our mattresses and carefully resealed the bag before they left. Or something that doesn't need a key. Something that has been in this cabin longer than my family has. Something that knows where the matches go and what the cracked tile has always bothered me and which way the rocking chair faces the morning light. Something that knew the cabin was empty for the winter and settled in. Made coffee, sat on the porch, read the old Bible, and tidied up before we arrived. We use the cabin the same way we always have. Spring through fall, we close it in October, drain the pipes, cover the furniture, seal the mattresses, stack the porch chairs, and every April when we open it, I walk through slowly. I look at the wood pile, I check the tile, I look at the direction of the rocking chair. Most years, everything is exactly as we left it. Last year, the flashlight batteries had been replaced again. We'd left them dead again, because we always mean to and forget. Someone left fresh ones on the counter, so we'd know. So we'd know they'd been there. So we'd know they were taking care of things. I stood at the kitchen counter and I looked at the dead batteries next to the new battery flashlight. And I thought about what Maeve said. The spine remembers. This cabin is over 100 years old. 100 years of springs and falls of people using it and leaving it and using it again. 100 years of its spine remembering. And whatever else has been using it over those 100 winters, it knows this place the way we know it, the way we love it. And every spring, when I open the door and smell the particular smell of a closed cabin opening to mountain air, I think about what opened that door over the winter and whether it was glad to be back, the way I always am. 3 cabins, a rental in a Tennessee holler where someone spent 4 months in deepening relationship with something at the tree line and left their phone charger plugged in when they stopped coming back. A North Carolina renovation that revealed a 6-foot sealed room accessible from nowhere, with an arrangement on the floor and something standing upright at its center, behind a window that could only be seen through from one side, and a Virginia family cabin that has been used by something over the winter for who knows how long, that drinks the coffee and fixes the batteries and reads the Psalms and sits on the porch in the cold looking at the holler. Here's what I think about when I think about these 3 cabins. A cabin is a specific kind of space, not a house. A house is infrastructure. A house has utilities and systems and neighbors. A house connects to everything around it. A cabin is a place you come to deliberately, a place you choose, a place that sits in the middle of everything that existed before you built it and will exist after you stop coming. And the deep Appalachians have been taking notes on every person who has ever come to every cabin and every holler and every ridge for a very long time. They know which mattress you prefer. They know which direction you angle the rocking chair. They know the cracked tile has always bothered you. And when the season changes and you leave, they settle in. They use the wood pile. They drink the coffee. They read the book to the page where the spine remembers. And when April comes and the key turns in the lock and you push open the door to the particular smell of a cabin that's been closed all winter, something in there has been waiting for you to come back. The same way you've been waiting for spring. Good night.